I'll start it there. I think the numbers have leveled out. Great. Just as Guy joined, I think I recognise everyone here. But if there is anyone here that doesn't know me, and for the benefit of afterwards, my name is Barry Cranford. I'm the organiser of a number of tech communities in London. One of those is the London CTOs, but we organise loads of different events and try and find ways to bring people together. So one of the things we started doing within that community about 18 months ago was having this lunch club, which was this great way where we'd put on a topic and a load of people would join, and then it would start off all these new relationships and all these new connections with people that are connected over the same kind of thing. So we wanted to do something similar. I've worked with Sam now for the last 4 or 5 years, and we were looking to do something similar in this space. And so this is where the FS Tech Coffee Club was born, or Financial Services Tech Coffee Club was born. So we do it every week, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We started off doing a bunch of sessions on various technology specialist areas within financial services. So we did observability, DORA, obviously AI. And then we pivoted a few months ago to scaling stories, where we're interviewing founders, CTOs, heads of engineering of interesting tech companies that have scaled or have scaled one part of their business. And going into detail to understand a bit about that particular niche and the wider ecosystem around it. So I'll hand over to Sam now, the ever-present host of the Coffee Club.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks everyone for joining, and great to see some new faces and some of the usual suspects as well. You folks are always welcome. I don't think we're a coffee club any longer. I think, Barry, it looks like you're maybe drinking from a cup of coffee, but as Neil has pointed out, it's impossible to tell. And I'm in the no coffee in the afternoon club. So maybe it's time for a change, but watch this space. We're talking today about scaling. And I think that anybody that's been part of a startup's story, either as a founder or a leader or someone that came in a bit later on, understands the push to scale and the push to grow and the push to kind of clear the tower. And we're going to take that today with our guest, Rob Porter, to quite an extreme. Right, and as we'll learn about Rob's business, FlexEarn, there's one aspect in particular that I think is a phenomenal example of very, very strong scaling. Two, now that I come to think about it, but the one is that there's only 2 people in the business. And so I'm joined today by my regular co-host, Jon Freedman. As you know, the 2 of us kind of jump in with questions and try to lead a narrative through the hour. If you have questions for Rob, or there's some way you want to take this conversation, please feel free, either jump into the chat or raise your hand virtually or otherwise, or it's a reasonable size group. Just be bold, come off mute. People do that and we're not precious about it. But I want to get straight into this conversation with Rob. Firstly, please, mate, introduce yourself and your business, and then tell us, what are the business choices and the design choices that allowed you to scale across hundreds of customers and to keep your cost base low?
Yeah, I mean, well, that is the first. So what we do is we are an earned wage access service provider. Earned wage access is kind of an industry which allows employees to get access to their salary before payday. So we effectively give them the money and then we recoup it from the employer after payday. We charge a fee for those withdrawals, £1.75. So if you think about, even with like 2 salaries of any reasonable amount, then and divided by £1.75, then it gives you an idea about the sort of scale that we actually need to get to actually get above the conning tower. So it is, it's thousands of users, it's thousands of transactions a day. We also support, it's quite a complicated business as well. So we have savings accounts as well. So you can withdraw from your earned wages into your savings accounts. The idea is to get people into the habit of saving. And you can also buy a discount card. So it's quite a rich functional system. We have We have to connect to hundreds of payroll systems and timesheet systems, and we have to make payments. We have to direct debit, gift card APIs, savings APIs. It's quite a complicated sort of platform and setup. And as Sam was saying, there's two of us. And my business partner, Jonathan, isn't particularly technical. He's an ex-credit trader. So the answer really is, how do we do that? And is it just has to be kind of zero administration business, right? There has to be no reconciliations. There has to be no manual testing. There has to be no account management. There has to be no invoicing. There's got, support has to be, customer support has to be absolutely minimal. We need to be focused. So, our monitoring and logging has to be exemplary, right? I just don't have the time to say, oh, is that really an error or is that not an error if it pops up? If once a week I get something that I might actually have to deal with. So, so we start from that really, and it's not just for us as well. We sell to customers, and one of their sort of initial objections that we try to get over is this going to cause us administrative problems? Are we going to get tied up with admin jobs? And so, we have to, not only do we have to make the thing sort of zero administration for us, we have to make it zero administration for the customers as well. And we do, and I think we do that. We do achieve that, right? We do. We achieve it in the sales demos that we do. We just run through the whole process. There's like almost zero work for them to do, and they can't believe it sometimes. I did a demo this morning, and the customer was like, "Fine, can we go live tomorrow?" sort of thing. And the answer is yes. So it's got to be hassle free. It's got to be kind of zero administration, and that's kind of where
was that something that you knew from the beginning would be important? Like, did you have plans to grow a headcount, or did you know that you would always try to run? So, like an example from my world, I run Turntabl as a software agency in Ghana, and Ghana is quite a conservative office culture. Lots of paperwork, lots of rubber stamps, literally in some cases, lots of signatures, lots of carbon copies, and we started out with none of that. So no one was allowed to buy a printer. No one was allowed to buy a filing cabinet to kind of squirrel away, printed paper. And it's only, we've been around for 5 years. It's only in the last 6 months that someone's, finagled a printer into the office. Did you know that right from the start?
No, I don't think we did. I mean, anybody has to say if you take the £1.75s and do some sums in your head, you're going to have to keep your costs low. So I think we knew we had to keep our costs low. We've been really tight on just about on all costs. But initially we did have a team, and it was only really that the speed of growth and the type of customers that we were getting. So some of our competitors, one of our competitors you might have heard is called WageStream, and they're sort of Goliath in this business, and they go for like much bigger customers than we do. So they're not interested in anybody less than like sort of 500 people in a company. They want to go NHS on there, not not sort of care home in Scotland or something. So I think it's to some extent it's been driven by the type of customers that we got, the speed that we got them, the funding situation that's always there, that it became quite clear that we were going to have to be the nimble one in this industry, right? So there's loads of other people out there. Maybe they can raise more funds than us, but we're going to have the lowest costs, bar none. So yeah, if we'd known sooner, that would have been really handy. To be fair, because we have had injections of cash along the way, and we'd still have more of that. So there was a point at which I think sort of Q1 2022 where we sort of let the team go, and we went down to 3 at that point, and then we went down to 2 not so long after that. And I think there's a learning also is like, is it actually possible? We didn't know. Is it actually possible? Can we make this zero administration platform? But now we know. It's if I was to do another business, I'd be sort of trying to do something similar. I do remember seeing an interview with a CTO who said, look, what's the primary responsibility of the CTO in a startup? And it's runway. It's like, how can you make the runway as long as possible and get as much stuff done that you actually need, that you really need, so that when you get to the end of the runway, you can take off. And that's stuff.
Do you think there's a forcing function to do with like the size of the team and what it is that the team is able to support? I guess I'm thinking out loud, like if you have a team of 5, then you'd probably think it would be impossible to run with just you, because you'd have a CTO and you'd have, you know, not just the kind of pastoral care for your team, but also they're building infrastructure that takes 5 people to support, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with just one person, you don't have that.
But there are huge benefits. There are huge benefits of it just being us, right? I mean, the decision-making process is like Jon and I having a chat. You know, the design process is me, right? So I can, in my head, weigh up all the pros and cons of any solution, any problem, whether we should do A, whether we should do B. So there's, you know, it makes my productivity like, you know, infinitely higher than it would be if I was running a team of 5. But at some point that runs out, that economy of scale, right? Or that economy of the opposite of scale, if you like. At some point you get, you know, we would have to change. And so I do think, you know, in the future, as we scale further, you know, there will be a point at which we do have to start hiring developers, hiring support staff, perhaps. Certainly the big push will be hiring more sales staff. And we can talk about that later, but, you know, that will require, I think, a slight change of attitude and a slight change of the way that we do things. But by that point, you know, like the platform is built, it's mature, it works, it runs by itself, it's running now. You know, I've made 2 or 3 software releases today already, you know, and so we'll have that to build on, I think, you know.
It is really interesting that you had a team and shrunk and didn't have to grow back. Because one of the angles to this around fintech, customer data, PII data, GDPR, InfoSec, all of these security and information security concerns is, as a founder, you can be quite paranoid about that. So I don't want to launch a business in a regulated or semi-regulated industry without being bulletproof. Do you looking back think the sort of starting energy you got from having a bigger team was key, like building the platform? It's there now it's evolving, but it exists. Is that part of it?
To be honest, I think there was when I arrived in this company, oh, by the way, I let somebody go on my first day.
Nice.
It was a bit of a mess, because I think a lot of, you know, business people think, well, I'll just run the tech team, you know.
Yeah.
And it just goes wrong very, very quickly. And the mess that is left behind is tragic. And I mean, this isn't my first rodeo in terms of startups either. And the previous startup I did build, you know, a good foundation directly by myself from the start, and then we grew the size of the team from there. And so, you know, a lot of the pieces were in place to make it, you know, harder to mess up. I spoke to a small business owner this morning, actually, and he has exactly the same problems. I reviewed their architecture about a year ago. 0 tests, absolute chaotic code base, just a total nightmare. And now he's like, oh my God, you know, now it's showing up at the customers, and the customers are complaining. And he's like, what do I do about it? So I actually, you know, I don't think, you know, having the energy at the beginning, I think getting it, for me, it's like getting the right architecture in place, getting the right pieces in place, getting the right attitudes in place. You know, you mentioned security and so forth there. So we're ISO 27001 compliant. And if you like, the biggest task I have in any 1 year is that audit. It's massive. It causes me. We also have a code of practice audit as well, and that's sort of half as much as the ISO audit. You know, that's when I wouldn't mind having a little bit of help. But again, you've just got to get those processes in place properly, you know, from the beginning. And again, the same problem that happened with ISO as well. So originally the ex-COO did those audits, and he started by just getting a default set of ISO documents and then customizing them. And I'm like, well, that isn't what we do. They don't do that. We can, you know, here's what we do, and then trying to sort of, you know, fit it in. It's almost the same as the, you know, the problem with the software. So I've since had a chance to sort of really clean that up and make it reflect what we actually do, make it at the right level for the size of the company and so forth. But yeah, sorry, you know.
No, it's a good example because fundamentally, if there's enough hours in your working day to do all of the work, then you don't need more people. It is, in some sense, as simple as that. So we want to talk about the practicality of building and deploying into customers with minimal overhead, and integration partners are a big part of that.
Yeah.
So payroll, timesheets, and payments. And you said, right, doing a sales call, talking about deploying tomorrow. How have you designed around that without risking destabilizing the existing pool of customers by adding a new one?
So I mean, the one of the first things where I really did want to focus a lot was on that data acquisition part. So if you like, those are two kind of key parts, like getting data from the customer and then making the actual transaction. And they're slightly different. But yeah, so when you create an account in our system, by the way, we have quite an elaborate console for us to do that kind of onboarding. It's about the only kind of manual effort that we actually do. But you just pick the system. So this morning, the customer was using Planday, which is a partnership we've already got in place. They have a nice API. We have many customers already on Planday. So it's just literally a case of create the account, pick Planday, send, it sends a bunch of emails to the customer saying this is how you connect, and we're done. So they then just follow through those instructions, sign off the contract and so forth, and off you go. So, but the infrastructure is designed such that whatever can be reused is reused, and that because it needs to be quick for me to implement these integrations, right? I don't need to be re-implementing all the validation rules or performance checking it's going to insert too many records in one go and all this sort of stuff, So it's designed such that you just implement a few classes, register them with the system, and off you go. I did last week Sage HR. We have a partnership with Sage actually, but they've been largely based around marketing because their technology used to be quite desktop based, but they've actually released this SaaS-based system called Sage HR, and this is our first customer on it. And honestly, it took me 3 hours, and that was in production. And so then I could get the customer to give me their API key, put it in the system, bang, they can look at their clients, and they, there it is, right? And it's really powerful to calm them down, if they're worried about the administrative overhead of it. But then you've got the payment side again, and this is where I really started to it being such a low cost business, we need the opportunity to be able to keep the cost lower and get the costs even lower. And so originally we were using modular for that. They're quite expensive. And Jon said, look, I've done a deal over here, for half price from TrueLayer. And I'm like, you want me to change the payments infrastructure? Like, what are you asking here? It seemed terrifying at first, but I just took the same approach really, and just, you put very clean interfaces in, you plug in modular, you plug in TrueLayer, you plug in a test version as well, you plug in a fake API, so that all my test infrastructure can work without, modular being there, without TrueLayer being there. And, we've ended up with a very, very nice situation. So it's absolutely essential that we can do that, even though it feels technically difficult initially. It's fundamental. We just got to keep on bashing away at the costs and getting them as low as possible. We're talking of doing it for our direct debit providers now as well, because we spend quite a lot on direct debit fees. That's how we get reimbursed. So we're looking at other, and that's an absolute core part. That's us getting paid back. If that breaks, we don't get paid back.
That bit.
And you think about the migration issue there as well, it'd be absolutely terrifying. So, but we've just got to be able to do it. It's fundamental to our operating model.
And I can see someone like TrueLayer, they have to have great documentation and make it easy for you to onboard because they're selling to you. But with Sage HR, for example, a big part of their business is trying to keep their customers' data in, not out. So is that a constraint, or do you find in the golden age of AI that however bad the docs are, you can work around it?
Well, it's I mean, there are some APIs which have got very, very bad docs, but the bigger SaaS providers, they're usually pretty good, but they do just not put in certain features that you need sometimes, and they ain't going to put them back in. And in fact, there's one competitor, there's one very large payroll provider who I won't mention, but they do earned wage access as well. And so there's certain things missing from their API, and they ain't going to change it for us. They might change it for some of our clients, so that the client will ask them to change this or to open it up, and sometimes they will. But I mean, TrueLayer and Modular, the documentation and the sandbox is absolutely exemplary. It's designed developer friendly, and you can really tell when something's developer friendly versus not. I think some of the worst ones have been the ones where it's been built for us, and that's usually terrible. Because they don't really want to do it anyway, because it's sort of helping our business model, but not necessarily helping their business model.
Rob, I've got a question about, just to go back to like how you've achieved it, and not to blow smoke, but a lot of the people that we speak to, almost by definition, they've built successful businesses, right? So we're not speaking to people that will come and say they don't have great infrastructure. We're not speaking to people that haven't managed to build great things under pressure. Like that, those people aren't usually, that's just human nature. I'm not very vocal about failures. But like Jon said, you do only have so many hours in the day, and you have built this system that is, and we'll come to testing later on, right? But like, is pluggable, allows you to sign up a new customer in a couple of days, does allow you to extend it. And then thirdly, there's clearly something about your mentality that allows you to look across the kind of landscape of your system and look at the risky parts, like the spicy parts, right? Payments, really, really important, and say, well, I'm going to go in and do the housekeeping, and I'm going to go in and make big retrofits and big changes, which some engineers might be reticent to do, right?
Yeah.
It's working, why touch it? My question is, what have you given up in order to be able to do that work?
Well, I don't know really. I mean, you talked about testing. I don't think we've given up anything particularly.
New features, new business directions, taking a risk on a new client area.
So maybe the pace of very big new features, perhaps. Maybe we're giving up something there, but I don't know. So savings was a new product for us this year, largely driven by A, our competitors, and B, our customers. Not really the users, right? The users love the cash withdrawals and the discounts, but the customers love the idea of savings. Providing this facility for their fairly low-paid employees to actually get on the savings ladder. And it took a while. There's issues there. It's a regulated product, so we have to work with a regulated entity. Those APIs didn't exist. So we didn't get, in the first version, we didn't get the kind of automated saving part of it live, but we've wanted to get something live to sort of make sure it's working back and forward. But the real meat of that project will be automated savings. Now again, it's another thing whereby my instinct is automating those savings it's worrying, right? There are loads of failure modes. If we save twice, we can't get the money back.
Right.
If the person hasn't got enough earned wages, then it'll fail. They'll get confused. They may come to the support channel, and you've got to be very careful to guide users so that they don't come to the support channel. Because even though that's kind of mostly automated, it can generate work if there's errors. So I think that project, I think, is the first one where we've taken longer over it, for sure. But as I say, the sort of the core meat and potatoes of our business is integrating new customers and getting new customers on there, and that's where we're just absolutely fantastic at it. And it is a lot to do with the testing and the architecture and the fact that we can test it so thoroughly, that we can just whack in a new integration, and I just know it will not break. I said we, like, I know it's not going to break. There's no other we's in there. And Jonathan just knows it will happen as well. He just trusts me to just sort of get on with it. So
Talk us
So yeah,
through that.
I think
Talk us through what your testing infrastructure likes, and what testing have you built that gives you the confidence to make those large changes and sleep at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think just through experience, as I say, this isn't the first time I've done a startup, and I'm just obsessed with the testing. There's a point you get to with automated testing where it guides you. You're just about to release something, or you think you finished something, and tests don't pass. You just can't believe it. And then sometimes it's just the test needed updating or whatever, but sometimes it's like an issue that you just weren't going to find. So, it is a bit of an obsession. Any bugs are just missing tests, in my opinion. You should just be confident, just press the go button and release it if your tests pass. So yeah, we do a lot of unit testing, but they're probably the least effective. Because if you think about most of what our systems do, there's an API with some permissioning stuff. Then you read from the database, you do some business logic, and then you write back to the database or write back to the client. And so you need to be able to test all of that. So we have quite a rich infrastructure for integration testing. So what I mean by that is integration testing with the database in memory and with the app server in memory as well, the API server, so that I can write tests, clear down the database, seed the database with data that's going to operate the test. So that's also quite a big piece, is being able to generate data for any tests. And so we do all of those unit and integration tests with Jest, runs in the cloud, runs automatically in GitLab. But then we also do end-to-end tests on both. So we have a Flutter app, which is iOS and Android, and Flutter comes with its own test infrastructure. We run that with our app server and in-memory database and all the data seeding, and it just runs through every single kind of user journey in that app. Everything that it can be done, it clicks on those buttons, and it's literally 100%. And then the web side of it, so the portal and the console that the users use, the administrative users, for that we use Cypress, again, for end-to-end testing with the same sort of back-end setting. So again, I know, when I press the button to run those tests, or I just push to GitLab, it is going to run through everything, right? It's going to create an account. It's going to create a company. It's going to create a payroll. It's going to create an employee. It's going to edit the employee. It's going to make a withdrawal. It's going to make a deposit. It's going to do all of those things. It's going to run through all of the login user journeys. And I've just got to the point now where, I kind of trust it completely. And I think you mentioned earlier on, that refactoring that it allows you to do. Without that, I do think it would have been hard to get here, because it just does. You need to do both. You need to have a good design, and you need to have a pluggable architecture, but you just need to be. You don't always get it right first time, right? You need to be able to change it across the board and feel confident. And that safety net of those tests really is, I think it's like absolutely fundamental. Again, I was talking to a chap this morning who didn't have this, and he's in a lot of pain, right? His customers are really getting annoyed with him, and he sees his business scaling, and he feels like this could be, this is absolutely business critical process now. So he's asking me how to do it. But yeah, I also think that I eliminate things that don't allow me to test. So when I arrived, it was using Firebase authentication, which is fine, but you really can't have Firebase in your tests, right? You need to test all the way through the authentication process, permissioning everything. And so I wrote my own authentication service, again pluggable. So I thought maybe in the future I might switch back or Auth0 or something like that, but just having control of that just makes the testing so much more easy and predictable.
That's an interesting design choice, right? I think that when someone is militant about testing, right? Don't be offended. That was a choice of words I made just then, right? For want of a better phrase. Sometimes, it always influences how you write code, right? How you write, product code. Building your own auth layer instead of using it off the shelf, has that had downstream impact on regulatory? Has that had people, has that been a challenge for you?
No, I mean, it hasn't come up in any of the audits. In fact, we've had quite a few fairly detailed. So some customers are, have their own security departments, and they'll send in their CSO to interview us, and we'll fill out a 500 question questionnaire to look at it, and they go into quite a lot of detail about that. And we we don't seem to have too many problems with that. We have changed it, so fraud has been a problem, a small problem, and again, it's something we just can't deal with, because suddenly you got the police involved, and I mean, it's just,
well, you need a fraud department, right?
Yeah, well, I am the fraud department.
Fraud yeah.
Is that you or Jonathan?
Well, it's sort of both of us. When somebody says, I didn't get that money, like, it's a problem.
Okay,
So we have changed that authentication process as well. So initially it was username and password, but we had some problems with that. And then it was one-time passcode over email. And really, it just turns out that emails are just not secure enough. People share their passwords with their children. Their children then do withdrawals out of their app, which has always amused me. But one person had been subject to a fraud already that year. They got into his bank account, so they had his email. So anyway, so we've switched now to SMS one-time passcodes and email one-time passcodes. So it's two factors. It's an SMS is much harder. So we get the phone numbers from the customer. We get the emails from the customer. So we're already at a head start there. We know the identity of this person. We just need to make sure that they don't. So yeah, it's given us the ability to change just really on a dime there. Just going from username and password to one-time passcodes, going from email to SMS. It's I think if we were using Firebase, I mean, like, I'm not really a big fan, honestly, of Firebase, but it would have been a nightmare, I think, to try and do those those pivots.
No, I don't mind being militant about testing. I'm quite militant about testing, and it's really nice to hear you talk about that as a driver for how you built the platform. So I'm listening to you speak, and you're comfortable talking to an audience about what your business and what it does. You built most of the tech. You have opinions, good opinions about how to do it, and are touching the whole thing. Is there a positive story for non-technical founders out there? Like, should they be looking for someone like you, and
Yes.
that's very rare, or is that focus on testing and somebody who's had a go before and this isn't their first time round, is that the secret sauce, do you think?
Well, I mean, I've in the last 5 years, I've seen it twice really clearly, that not having a competent technical co-founder is going to be a nightmare. And the change, and I do think, as I say, Jonathan, before I joined, thought, well, I'll just manage the tech team, and he just had no idea. They just ran rings around him, and he knew they were running rings around him, and things just weren't getting done, and people were doing it in different ways, and they were arguing. And the difference after I arrived, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I could see him visibly relax. He's like, he just thought this was going to kill his business if he couldn't get it sorted out. And so he hired me, and even in the startup, paid like a reasonable salary. So he didn't undercut it at that point. And we've definitely proven that works, that attitude. And the other one being this guy that I was speaking to this morning. They just don't have a technical co-founder. They have a team in Vietnam who, I'm sure they're great developers, but there's nobody really there to say, guys, it's a mess, right? I can't open the files in my IDE because there's 10,000 lines of code and it's trying to lint them, and my CPUs are boiling. This is ridiculous, right? And he needs somebody like us, right, that's going to be able to tell him what to do. And I think, again, he's just thought, well, I'm a smart guy. I can do it. But there's, it's a big topic, and you've got, it's not just do automated testing. It's a lot of things, and you have to you have to make the right choices. So yeah, I do think that And my previous startup, which did fail, but not from a technical perspective. But the founder there was an ex-trader that I knew, and he knew he was not technical. And he was reading books about how to do startups, and they were like, "Get yourself a technical co-founder right from the start, because it helps with funding. For nothing else, right? You can go along and the people who are going to give you money, they're also going to inject like very, very smart people to quiz you about how how a system is built, and is it legal, is it safe, is it reliable. So I think technical co-founder really is critical for any startup. Yeah.
It's a challenge for the founder or founders. It's a lonely role in some sense, because you're so focused on your world, your baby. It's got its flaws, but it's something you strongly believe in. And that example of 10,000 lines of code in a file, I hear that and I'm like, wow, that should never happen.
No.
But clearly you don't go from 100 lines to 10,000 in a week, right?
No.
So it's grown, and it's entropy in some sense. So having that technical expertise, yeah, definitely important.
I mean, it just, to me, strikes, these guys are quite smart, but it's just a rudderless ship, just totally rudderless. So they're so terrified of making any changes because they might break something, that they just make it worse with every release. And you can see in WebStorm, because it highlights the duplicate bits of code, the cut and paste.
Yeah.
And there's loads in that file, and you just think, right, this is just rudderless, right? These guys have they're just terrified of breaking something, so they always duplicate. Even the entire user interface got duplicated. It's a total rudderless mess, and the founder can't understand how he got that way. He just doesn't understand how they wouldn't know not to do that.
Well, there's a trust angle to it, I think, in that you want to, as a human, believe the best in people. Everyone's as invested in your cool idea as you are. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, I think, as some of these things you describe. So
I want to jump in with a question. It's just occurred to me. Rob, have you got bad coding habits? Like, a code base that's written by one person is very, very different from a code base that's written by a team, right?
Yeah, but
go on. You know what the question is.
Like, if you show a piece of code to one developer, they'll go, "That is terrible." And you show it to another one, the person who wrote it will think it was amazing, right? So it's quite personal, if you like. I think that I think our code base is very consistent. It has a nice architecture. I haven't come up with that whole architecture, right? It's patterns of use. It's the frameworks that we've used. And I've just tried to use it in the way that it was meant to be used. So we use a thing called Nest.js for our web server and for our API server, if you like. And that really does help a lot in saying, this is how you do things, okay? And I'm quite up with it. I know there's a lot of people out there who like to do the things that absolutely their own way. This is the React versus Angular, if you like. We use Angular, and Angular tells you what to do. React does not tell you what to do. And the React community think that's a virtue for React, and the Angular community thinks that's a virtue for your Angular. So I happen to like Angular. I don't mind React either. It's fine, but all of our web stuff is written in Angular. So, but there are errors for sure, in there. And I think other people might look at it and just go, "Oh, I don't like why you did that," or whatever. But I think it's proven.
It's got tests and it works.
It's got tests, it works. I can release it all day long, and it's got a 4.9 on Google. Google reviews with like 2,000 reviews. So it's obviously people who are using it as well like it. So yeah. But I'm sure I do have bad habits here, but I wouldn't know what they were.
Well, you can get AI to code review, but it's always very friendly and nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously AI has been a real help with the nitty gritty. I don't use it like vibe coding or anything. I don't use Cursor or anything like that. But I use Claude and I use ChatGPT a lot, and it has helped. I mean, it is quite incredible what it can do. But I do use it in the minutia rather than the macro, if you like. I get it to you know, do the first version of a Flutter widget or something, and it can astonishingly good at that. But but then, you know, I force myself to for it to be my code before it gets into the system. You know, like it's not ChatGPT's code. I'll make it how I want it to look and feel, and the code to be, you know, consistent with the rest of the platform. But you know, it's been a big help when you get stuck on something. You know, ChatGPT and Claude are just amazing at helping you through those difficult bits. It doesn't matter what it is. It's infrastructure, build, you know, test, database, everything, and it you know, it can remove the pain.
Yeah. Well, you've got a team of 1.5 developers at least with AI.
It's like pair programming the whole time.
No.
You know, and you can get ideas from it as well. You know, how would you do this? So it does help. You know, so
we're going to take the conversation away from the tech a little bit onto go to market. You talked about sales, maybe hiring more salespeople in the future. That's clearly powering your business. Can you talk a little bit about different strategies that have worked and maybe haven't worked? So partnerships or advertising through certain venues. Like how do you decide where you're going to focus next when you have just the two of you? You've got to make good bets.
We just do everything. It's chuck it at the wall and see what sticks. And you know, it's an area where we, you know, like you've got to spend money, and so we will. You know, the reason that we don't scale up on that is we don't have the money to do it just now. So we are looking to get funded. And, you know, there's a good story there because the unit economics of the business is very good. We have very good gross profit on every single transaction. So it's attractive to funders, very low credit risk as well, right? So the people who are giving us the money to lend to the companies, we're not lending to the individuals, right? They've got good credit ratings. And so there's virtually zero risk to the people who are giving us our funding, giving us the debt. But we've got to scale it up. So yeah, getting the right scale up is useful. Now, partnerships are great because they really don't cost anything. And we've got a number of very, very, very good partnerships. One with a software provider that provides care home software. And they came to us and they said, we've got a customer that wants our product, but they don't want it unless it's got an earned wage access solution attached to it. So would you like to partner up? And we're like, yeah. And so, you know, we must have half of their user base has signed up, if not more. We don't really know how big their user base is, so we're sort of guessing. So partnerships is great, doesn't cost anything. You don't have to keep paying for it. It just keeps on giving. You just get new customers from them. We've had some other partnerships who have been sort of less great. Where, you know, we've got the first customer, and Planday is a good example. We got first customer, got onto their marketplace, didn't get another customer for a year. So that was a bit depressing. So we've done all the work, you know, but we don't get any of the benefit. But so partnerships are great though. Digital has got us our biggest client. So, you know, like Google Ads and SEO. Somehow Jonathan magically managed to get our SEO to be like above wage streams. He typed earned wage access into Google. I don't know whether it's still there, but we would come out top. So we got some nice customers through that. But obviously you really, you know, that's about how much you spend, right? That's expensive. So, you know, we need to be spending, you know, a big chunk of money in order to make that work. Cold calling, you know, we've had a few goes at that. Kind of does work, but the beauty of the digital is that when somebody comes to Google and says earned wage access, they are a warm client already. They're a warm lead. They want it, what you're selling. So then it's very, very down. As soon as they send in, I would like a demo request. You know, we'll convert like almost all of them. Like it's very rare once they've actually said I want a demo request. They get a demo request, they're going to sign up. Whereas with outbound cold calling, you're going to somebody and you're hoping that they're going to want your product, and they're like, maybe, yeah, you know, it's quite a good idea. So there's a big hurdle to get over there. It's much harder. So it's been hard cold calling. It's you know, our sales guy we did have a sales guy for a few months this year. He left. But he did do very well, but I think he found the cold calling was like tough because it just, you know, it's so much work, and you know, you're going to get like 1 in 10 picking up the phone. So it's pretty, it's pretty soul destroying. We did events. So we went to care home events up in London. They have various conventions. They were great. And there you've got like halfway between warm and cold lead, if you like. Somebody's there because they're looking at the market and will say, well, what can I do for my employees? And so they see this. So they're not like already intending to get earned wage access, but they're open to it, as opposed to a cold call, which is like open to putting the numbers down.
So that's interesting, because we typically get advice about finding a niche, like, but your niche is people who get paid.
Yes,
which is most of the country. So it's interesting that care home angle has worked.
Well, it also sort of, once you get one, people start to move between the care homes, like both at the administrator level and at the user level. So some of them are just like, oh, let's get FlexEarn now because we had it at the last place. We have the partnerships in that area. It's not just with one. There's like about 4, I think. So they can bring us customers as well. So it is our largest sector. Retail and hospitality is quite big. We're trying to go big in that. But yeah, health is pretty big. But yeah, it is the biggest challenge. I mean, I think the tech, will scale to 50 times what we're doing now. I think without any work, and still work perfectly well. Whereas scaling the sales up like that is difficult, right? It's really hard work.
It's nice to be a technologist in a business like that, right?
Well,
like I've done my bit.
It isn't. It isn't. There's no there's only 2 of us. You can't say sales is your job. Why aren't you doing more sales? Because in fact, actually, dealing with investors is, and getting funding is like half his job. So yeah, we do. He's on holiday this week, so that's why I'm doing sales this week. So
buck stops with you. I guess there's a level of abstraction in which all businesses are the same, and then there's the more interesting one where all businesses are completely different. But I guess somewhere in between there sits a fairly bog standard B2B challenge, which is we've got this great tech platform. How do we generate sales, right? And in that regard, do you think of yourselves as very, very different from other businesses in the same way that you do technically, in the fact there's only 2 of you, or do you just look at it as a B2B sales problem?
I mean, I do think we do have the lowest cost base out there. There's no question we're different in that respect. And in fact, we're quite friendly with the guys at WageStream, and I mean they can't quite believe it. And so actually, we get quite a lot of referrals from them. So that if somebody with less than 100 employees phones up WageStream, they'll say, "I just go talk to FlexEarn." They're that friendly with us.
That's quite nice. It's quite a nice place to be in, right? Like a stratified.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great. I mean, I think we've got a number of different channels of sales, but they're kind of not our channels of sales. We really want our channel to be the one that we can scale and just know that it bring in customers. So it's all very, very well them sending us customers from time to time, but we can't scale that up. It's just going to be, and they may just one day change their minds. So.
Right.
So yeah, it needs to be sort of us. Sorry, I can't remember the exact question.
About B2B sales, but I guess to develop the thought a little bit, your unit economics muddied a little bit by sometimes there's employer pays. I think you have that that offer.
Well, that's even better. Employer pays for us is it's fantastic. We love it. So,
is that a risk question? Is that a question of risk or?
No, it just means the employees will use the service more.
Right.
Because there's no rate. So
there's no cost of doing it.
There's no cost of it. And the other wrinkle is customers will come to us with bad credit ratings, and our funding situation says we can't lend to them. So so we then ask them for a deposit. So if in this situation, if they give us a deposit, we're not even borrowing the money, right? So that makes our profit margin even better on those transactions. So yeah, so if we have a combination of employer pays plus deposit, then it's fantastic.
That's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Let's just move forward a little bit. So we're coming to the top of the hour, and I want to offer our audience the opportunity again to jump in with a question in the chat. But whilst we're doing that, I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about what the future looks like for the earned wage access space, but also for your product. What's coming next?
I mean, I sort of did mention it earlier on. We're going to go into automated savings, which I said, my previous startup was called Switchcraft, and it was an automated energy switching platform. You might remember to look after my bills on Dragon Den. We were there first, right? We were there before that, but we didn't get on Dragon's Den. And they kind of stole a march. But that automating is tough. Automating retail kind of things that users should be doing. You know, like at Switchcraft, sometimes they would forget that they'd signed up with us and we'd switch their energy, you know. So that sort of worries me a little bit. But yeah, so that's kind of the next feature that's coming out. We are largely led by customers asking us for stuff. So if a customer comes along and says, you know, look, I've got this time and attendance system, you know, that will be the next priority, right? Is plugging into that time and attendance system and finding out how we could do it. And, you know, if they're a big customer and there's no API or whatever, then, you know, finding a solution there. So that's always the priority, what those customers can do. You know, but we think what we're looking, I don't really want to get into too much, but we've got quite a big customer base. How else can we monetize them? It's a question we're constantly asking. I think we've taken earned wage access as far as it can go. You know, other vendors have things like financial calculators and so forth. They don't get used a lot. We think, you know, keeping it core product around earned wage access is we're about where we need to be. So it's like, how can we monetize the same customer base, you know, with a different product? You know, what does that look like? So we've got various ideas around that. And if we could do that, you know, we do very well. You know, one thing we've only just started doing is a subscription model. So we've just, and you know, for a long time, one of those things that we said was our USP was we're free to the employer. We didn't want to have any friction with the employer. We wanted them to go, all right, it's free. That's how it's right. I'll just sign up. And we didn't want them to have to sign off some big license fee, you know, go through some mechanics. Anyway, we just said to ourselves, right, let's try it. And so we now have a subscription fee for customers that are smaller than 100 employees, and they don't mind. So it's a monthly subscription fee, and you know, it means that we can deal with smaller customers, and it seems like that isn't something that's going to frighten them off. And so I don't really know what our competitors are doing down there. We sometimes do a little bit of, you know, industrial espionage to find out, but it seems to be working for us. So it's a whole new revenue stream in a sense, which is excellent. You know,
I'm naturally cynical, but I try and be optimistic about employees and employers. It is hopefully a positive sign that the employer is trying to get better outcomes for the employee, because especially with savings nudging, there's no obvious direct benefit to the employer. It is genuinely something that they're trying to nudge their employees to get better outcomes, which I think is great.
Yeah, but I mean, the real benefits to the employers, even if it's the cash withdrawals, is the kind of retention rate and the recruitment. You know, it's something that they'll always put on like a job spec, you know, because it just people are attracted by it. You know, it's something like a third of, if you've got a care home group, 1,000 staff, you'll get 300 users, 250 maybe, you know, and they'll be using it once or twice a month. And it just saves their lives. I mean, you only got to read the Google reviews. They all say, oh, you know, like, saved my life, this thing, because I don't know, they couldn't get home because they didn't have any petrol, or, you know, they couldn't catch a train, or they couldn't buy their shopping. So, you know, the employees absolutely love it, and they do communicate that to the employers, and so the employers do sort of see it as a benefit that way, even though it is. So we've got some questions coming in.
That's awesome. Well, we've got a Zoom clap, definitely.
All right, that was what it was. Okay.
No, that's awesome. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. Rob, thank you so much for making the time to come and talk to us.
Pleasure.
It's been fascinating, and I don't think we can beat you in that we'd have to find a scaled business with one employee at this point. So thanks so much for sharing. I'll hand back over to Barry to close it out.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it was even more fascinating than I thought it'd be, and great sort of hearing exactly how you've done it. So thanks so much, Rob, for coming on. I've put a link to a document in the chat So one of the big reasons we do this, obviously there's only so much we can cover in 1 hour, but it's really just like everything that we do with the lunches, with the events, with everything. It's all about trying to make connections, bring people together. Obviously, you've all come here for a reason, so you clearly are interested in similar spaces. Feel free to put your LinkedIn details on the link there. It's already got Rob's, Jon's, and Sam's, and myself on there as well. So if you want to put your details down, connect with the others on the call. That's obviously a big part of doing this. We are actually going to take a short break now, so we should be back in a couple of weeks. There is a link, hopefully, on that document, or if there isn't there now, then it will be within the next 5 minutes, because I'm going to put it on there to sign up and subscribe to all the other events in this series. So we're back in a couple of weeks for that. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. One more time, thanks, Rob. And as always, appreciate it, Sam and Jon. And we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rob. Cheers. Bye-bye.